Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Voice of America, the official podcast of the People's National Party. I'm your host, Owen, and on today's episode, we're just going to spend a few minutes recapping the elections that happened this past week on Tuesday and what it means for the 2022 midterms and potentially 2024. So, to start off, the two biggest elections that we were focusing on Tuesday was the Virginia governor race and the New York City mayoral race. And of course, there were many other elections that were happening, some that I'll even touch on in this episode. But those were the two biggest ones that were nationally recognized as, influential races, depending on the outcomes. That and the New Jersey governor's race as well, which came down to the wire, just like Virginia's. And I'll go into detail about all of these elections in a second. Now, to start off with New York City, the mayoral race, Sliwa, our endorsed candidate, obviously lost. He did pick up Staten Island, which was the only borough in New York City that the Republican could win, but Eric Adams, had a comfortable 66% majority in the election, so he cruised on into that mayor's office, and he will be calling the shots for one of the biggest cities in the world for these next few years. Moving on to Virginia, pretty interesting. It went back and forth all night, really, and it was really anybody's game as time went on, and then you ultimately got to the point where there was so many factors, and things had to align perfectly for Glenn Youngkin to become victorious. A lot of the political talk show hosts were focusing on the fact that not only did Youngkin have to pick up the rural Trump voters from Western and Southern Virginia, but he also had to get the suburbs around the major cities, around Richmond and different counties like Loudoun County. So he had to get that perfect balance, and he ended up doing that. He ended up winning with roughly 51% of the vote, and he will be the Republican. Glenn Youngkin will be governor of Virginia for the next 4 years, which is huge. It's a huge win. He was our endorsed candidate. The Republicans are very excited about this. He's not quite a full-on Trumpy, but he's not a extreme rhino or moderate or whatever the label is nowadays that the Trump's most Republicans are using for people like Adam Kinzinger or Liz Cheney. So he's a nice balance. He's in between, and I think he's what Virginia would need in this time. He's pretty consistently conservative, and he should be able to make some reform and change in the great Commonwealth of Virginia. And then, of course, the New Jersey's governor race, that one was going either way as well all night long until the Democrat, the incumbent, finally pulled out ahead and took the win. So those were the three biggest elections, I would say, that night. There were also other mayoral races. Buffalo had a mayoral race, pretty interesting. The incumbent Democrat who lost the primaries earlier this year staged a write-in campaign, and it seems to be that he ended up winning, actually, against India Walton, the socialist, who won the Democratic nomination. That happened. I think Atlanta also, at Boston, I know, had a mayoral race. All Democratic wins, obviously. But specifically, there is one very interesting story that I think is worth noting, and that is in New Jersey's state legislature. The Republicans have been talking about this a lot recently in these past few days because it really is very interesting. The Senate president of the New Jersey State Senate, who is a Democrat by the name of Stephen Sweeney, lost his seat on November 2nd in the election to a truck driver running as a Republican who spent $150 on his campaign. The truck driver's name is Edward Durr. He won with 51% of the vote, and honestly, that's unbelievable. But, I mean, this nobody, literally a nobody, came in and beat a career politician. And this is exactly what we're talking about here at the PNP. This is exactly what we want. We want this kind of motivation and excitement. We want people to know that you can come from your community. You can be considered a nobody, and you can express your views, your populist agenda. Now, I'm not quite sure about the exact policies that Edward Durr supports. I'm assuming he's much more of a mainstream Republican. However, this is a message, and we must learn from this. We must understand that it is possible to unseat the supposed unseatable politicians who have been there forever, who have never done anything, whether they be Democrat or Republican. We have the power and the influence to do these things. If we do enough campaigning, if we fight the good fight, and if we put the effort into actually making change. I may not agree with Edward Durr on every single policy. Here at the PNP, we might have very differing opinions, possibly on economic issues, I would say, for the most part. However, I personally respect him. The fact that he, as a member of his community, was able to say, look, this career politician is not representing our views of our community that I've lived in and I've worked in my whole life. I'm a blue-collar American citizen, a member of District 3 of the New Jersey State Legislature, of the State Senate, or I should say a constituent of that district. And I believe that the man that's representing us is using his power for his own personal gain, and he's not helping the people. So I'm going to do something about that. And he did do something about that. And he flipped the district. An amazing, amazing performance. Truly is. So, overall, Tuesday night, there were some wins, there were some losses for the Republicans and for the Democrats. And as for our people, the people we supported, it went the same way. Sometimes you have good things that happen. Sometimes you don't have the best things that happen on election night. But there's only so much you can do. Now, as for setting up the agenda for 2022, this was a pivotal night. Tuesday night was a very pivotal moment, as it did give political scientists and the strategists and the campaign organizers and the voters, just general U.S. citizens, a better understanding. It gave them a better understanding of what to expect in 2022. We see that someone like Joe Biden can win Virginia by, I believe, 10 points in 2020, but then a Republican can come in whose name is not Donald Trump, and he can come in and win. And he can rally the support of a broad support from the rural voters to the parents in the suburbs who are fed up with the education system, that local education and the school board in a lot of these areas. And they can reject the leftist propaganda that is being infesting all schools across America. We see in New Jersey, a very solidly liberal state, a state that was supposed to have their incumbent, Governor Murphy, the Democrat, win by at least 10 points. But he narrowly eked out a victory. And it really goes to show that people are starting to get fed up. Now, the Democrats have different proposals of why this is the case. Some Democrats say we weren't moderate enough. McAuliffe was not moderate enough. He didn't do a good enough job. People like AOC actually say it's the fact that we put in someone that's too moderate, like McAuliffe, and we didn't put in someone progressive enough, which doesn't really make sense. It would seem to be that the more radical of a person you put in or try to put in office, the less of a chance you have of actually getting them in, especially in a very toss-up state like Virginia is becoming. So at this rate, if things keep going the way they do, I would not be surprised if there is, if we have a Republican Senate and possibly even House of Representatives after the 2022 midterms, because the independent voters of America, which make up the majority of U.S. citizens, it's not Democrats or Republicans, it's the independents and the NPAs. Out of those people, I think a good portion of them are going to look at this and they're going to say that the left and their policies are not working. They're not working for us, especially their social issues, and that they're fighting for. And we need to do something about it. Joe Biden was supposed to come in here and do nothing. He was really supposed to come in and do nothing. He was supposed to be a moderate. He was supposed to be someone who didn't push for crazy radical agendas and basically restored things to the way they were before Trump. But he's not doing that. Conservatives are upset with him because of his radical economic proposals, and specifically here at the PNP, we're not huge fans of the fact that he is extremely left-wing in regards to social issues when he wasn't supposed to be. So a good portion of American citizens, like I said, are going to see this. They're going to have an open mind and they're going to look. And they're going to see Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and what they've done in these past, by 2024, it'll be 4 years, obviously, the past 4 years, and they're going to make their decision. And I think as long as it's not some nut job like Trump, who had some serious character issues, whether you like him or not, you have to admit that. If there's not someone like him that Biden is running against, there's a very legitimate chance that the Republicans are going to gain control of the White House and Congress in the near future, potentially. So, very exciting. It all really is very exciting. And we're happy to be here with you along this crazy journey in the political world. And that will wrap up today's episode. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. It is a shorter episode, just like last week's, but we do have a lack of issues to talk about. The news is kind of bland recently. There hasn't been a whole lot going on besides Biden's economic agenda, vaccine mandates, and that's really just about it. And specifically issues that personally affect our party. The options get a little bit more narrow. So we're doing our best to make sure that this podcast stays consistent, and we continue to produce a weekly episode for our audience on YouTube and on Spotify. And if you have any ideas for any topics you want to be discussed on this podcast, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to hear all of the ideas that everybody has, because that's what this party's about, listening to the people and their concerns and what they want to be addressed. And if you're a populist, if you're someone who fights for working families, and there's an issue that is pressing and concerning to you and your community, please reach out. Please let us know so we can do something about this, whether that means talking about it and spreading awareness or going out there and actually making the change. So as always, thank you. I look forward to talking to you next week, and God bless.